John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. He's popular and proficient in picking politics with prophetic precision. And now J. Fred's picking sports. Are y'all ready for this? All across the airwaves and streams of the John Fredericks Media Network, John, Jack, and Nate, three guys that are pretty wise when it comes to picking winners. Football, basketball, baseball, soccer, golf, UFC battles, you name it. When the game is on your mind and money's on the line, Godzilla Wins is your guide to picking winners. Before you make that play, hear what J. Fred has to say. Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
Oh yeah, for entertainment purposes only.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show here on Saturday, June 1st. I'm your host, Jack Fredericks, alongside senior editor for GodzillaWins.com and college baseball guru right now, Dan Angel. We'll also be joined by Nate Perry, senior editor for Godzilla Wins. And at 8:30 Eastern Time, we're going to talk a little UFC. Going to bring in Manpreet Joss from MMA Lock of the Night. You can find them on YouTube. And Trent Connor, one of our both of whom are our staff writers for Godzilla Wins and do a lot with the UFC. 9 o'clock, we're going to talk a lot of college baseball. And then 9:30, we're going to welcome in Jay Delsing, our old friend Jay. He's going to do some Canadian Open talk with us for golf. Should be a pretty fun show here. As I'm sure you're aware, if you've ever listened to this show before, Godzilla Wins and all of its subsidiaries are for entertainment purposes only. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537 in Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. 800-327-5050. Visit gamblinghelpline-ma.org in Massachusetts. Call 877-G-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 Kansas and New Hampshire, 888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, or visit opgr.org in Oregon. So, Dan, we're going to talk a little bit here in a minute about our weekly obsessions, what we've been doing this week. I'm sure you've been doing a ton of college baseball. We'll welcome in Nate Perry when he gets in here too, which I'm sure will be soon. We don't have Dad today. No John Fredericks, no Godzilla of Truth. He was going to be on the show. He called me yesterday and said that their flight to Tucson to go watch West Virginia baseball and watch Joe, my brother, pitch was canceled. They couldn't get out there. Well, then West Virginia played incredibly well against Dallas Baptist, a tough team, won that game, and they immediately decided to fly out to Tucson at 5 a.m. So they're probably in the air right now.
Yeah.
So we won't have Dad joining us today, but he'll be back, I'm sure, next week, all fired up to talk about whatever is on his mind, which, you can't even, that's not even really a fair game trying to guess what's on his mind. Could be anything.
I mean, the way things are going, it's probably going to be West Virginia baseball because that regional is now just opened up.
It has. And we'll talk about that at the top of the hour, but just as a little snapshot for any fans out there following the region down there in Tucson. Grand Canyon, which is a school based in Phoenix, upset Arizona last night. Yep. So now the game 3, which will decide which are the two teams who are undefeated, not the elimination game for that region, is going to be the 3 and 4 seeds, West Virginia and Grand Canyon. And the elimination game is going to feature Dallas Baptist and Arizona, two teams that I think everybody thought would advance. And now one of them is going to be eliminated today. So it's
and Dallas
pretty,
Baptist has already beaten Arizona once. So West Virginia might not even see the Wildcats in this regional.
It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting, but you can't overlook Grand Canyon now either. That's the toughest thing about these college sports. Any type of format, I mean, it's always going to be like this. So before we get too far into our weekly obsessions, and I've got some college baseball I want to talk about too. So we'll start with college baseball. We'll go back to it at 9. I'm sure, Dan, you've got some stuff you want to talk about. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about Healthy Cell. Don't have Dad today to talk about his love for Healthy Cell's REM sleep aid. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I love, and this is why I love Healthy Cell, because I use their joint health and mobility all the time. I do a lot of exercising, I guess. I've been weightlifting for a long time, and while I've taken a little bit of a break because of some nagging injuries, Healthy Cell really keeps me healthy and my joints healthy. It's joint health and mobility at Healthy Cell. Keeps my joints well oiled and healthy, and alleviates a lot of the pain that I feel that's sort of lingering at all times when I'm lifting weights and trying to go a little bit heavier than usual. Whenever that happens, it's just very difficult to stay healthy, to feel like your joints and your tendons are just up to 100%. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, the best product I've ever used is Healthy Cell's Joint Health and Mobility. So what I need you to do is go to healthycell.com. That's healthycell.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla. You get 20% off your first order, 20% off every order, I believe, at healthycell.com. And if you, they've got all sorts of great products. I just love the joint health and mobility. So do a little shopping while you're on the site. It's a great website, and they've got all sorts of different needs for you. It's not just, they've got some brain stimulation stuff. They've got sleep aid that's the REM sleep that Dad talks about all the time. They have all sorts of stuff that you can try and use, and that promo code Godzilla makes it a little more, gives you a great deal. It gives you a great deal. So healthycell.com, promo code Godzilla. Healthy Cells Health and Mobility. Cannot recommend it more highly. All right, Dan, we got about 15 minutes, then we'll move on to we'll do a little bit of Bill Walton talk, because sadly he passed along this week. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about our weekly obsessions. What you got?
I mean, my biggest weekly obsession has to be on the Champions League final. So Borussia Dortmund facing Real Madrid, and Real Madrid has basically been the gold standard in European soccer. They have dominated La Liga. They've been one of the top teams competing for the Champions League year in, year out. And Borussia Dortmund has kind of, like, they're always up there in the Bundesliga, but they've kind of fallen back to the pack a little bit as far as European sides go. So this is kind of a Cinderella run for this team. They didn't come all that close to winning the Bundesliga title. Granted, nobody was catching Bayer Leverkusen with what they did going undefeated this year. But Dortmund has gone so long without winning a domestic title, and this would be just so ironic if Bayern Munich goes, they finally saw their Bundesliga streak ended, they go without a major trophy, and they have to watch Bayer Leverkusen and Borussia Dortmund lift the two most important trophies that they play for. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think Dortmund's outmatched here, but Dortmund looked outmatched in their previous few matchups, so anything is possible.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Bundesliga is the German soccer league, much like the Premier League in England. And so my understanding, because we used to publish a ton of Bundesliga stuff on here. We had a writer named Thomas Woods who he did basically all soccer, but he loved to do the Bundesliga. So I was like, well, yeah, sure, just go ahead and write those up. And so I would read them, especially when I was still editing them before it was clear that he could edit his own work and post it, because he was a great writer, much like you, Dan. And so my understanding, and this is layman's understanding, maybe I've seen one Bundesliga match in my whole life, is that Bayern Munich is like like the Patriots, right? I mean, they're the club that is just really difficult to beat. So the fact that they're on the ropes has got to be noteworthy.
Bayern Munich is basically what the Patriots have done to the AFC East the last 15 years or so. I mean, I think the streak was 11 consecutive titles for Bayern Munich, and they were basically rarely even threatened. Like this year, they finished third, and it's a disaster for them.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I remember about those articles was, man, like they were always heavy favorites every match that I would read. I'd be like, oh my God, it's like minus 300 for these guys or whatever.
But it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, in soccer, you always have the haves and the have-nots, especially in those European leagues. And Bayern,
Mhm.
the fact that Bayern Munich is in that third place spot might not raise a trophy. I think in Germany is
Yeah.
probably nuts.
And it's kind of amazing because this year they brought in Harry Kane, who is England's top striker. And Harry Kane had famously never won a title at Tottenham Hotspur because Tottenham Hotspur has just never lifted a trophy. They're always close, but they can never quite get over the hump. And then Harry Kane moves to Bayern, and Bayern finally experiences its first time in God knows how long without winning a trophy. So there's now talk is Harry Kane just cursed?
Yeah, he might be.
Yeah,
he might be.
it's possible.
I've certainly seen some Harry Kane memes that suggest that he carries some sort of weird curse with him. So look, if you like Bundesliga, what isn't it? Is it NBC that airs? Who airs Bundesliga?
The Bundesliga is on ESPN Plus.
Okay, ESPN Plus. So if you
So
look, if you don't,
this match is going to be on CBS because CBS has the rights. Like European soccer is kind of weird with how they break it up. Like NBC has the Premier League. ESPN has the Spanish League and the Bundesliga. CBS Paramount has the Italian League and has the Champions League, Europa League, and the huge European competitions. So this match is going to be on CBS, and this is going to decide the champions of Europe.
okay, so you can catch that on CBS, and then most of that soccer is on ESPN Plus. If you're a sports fan, you don't have ESPN Plus, I don't know what you're doing because you can't catch all of the fringe sports. One thing ESPN Plus does really well is the fringe stuff. That's why I know Dan loves it so much.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about my weekly obsession. I mean, I've got two that I really love, and one that I'll kind of probably mention in the golf segment, and maybe one that I'll mention in the baseball segment. So we might bring these up again. My golf obsession this week is Charlie Hull, who is a professional golfer on the LPGA, the women's tour, who has started smoking cigarettes all the time. I can't remember. I mean, I've followed Charlie Hull for much of his career. I don't ever remember seeing her just ripping darts on the course or when she's signing autographs. I don't know if this is a new habit for her where she just started smoking. Probably not. She's probably been smoking for a long time and just decided, I'll just do it on the course now. So love to see a golfer with a cigarette. Always, reminds you of John Daly or some of the older golfers, or some of those MLB managers from back in the 80s and 90s, or even before that, smoking cigarettes while they're calling the pitch count or the pitches or stuff like that. So love to see that. I say keep it up, Charlie Hull. I'm not a smoker, but I do like to see athletes ripping darts every once in a while. And my other one is, and I don't know how many people caught this game last night, college baseball, first round, really awesome game. UNC Chapel Hill in their regional against Long Island University. Yeah, I figured you'd catch this. So, and Dan, my memory might be a little foggy, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Long Island was down to like their last out or their last strike in the ninth, down 5-4, and they hit like a 3-run bomb to go up 7-5, and then I know they scratched across another run.
Yep.
So then it's 8-5. Long Island looking to upset number 1 seed UNC late into the night. This is real late into the night. And UNC walks it off in the bottom 9 with a walk-off grand slam. So that's one heck of a way to start the college basketball World Series, or the college baseball World Series for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, that was getting a lot of attention where I was in Tallahassee because Florida State, obviously an ACC rival of UNC. So the Seminoles fans were looking on at that score thinking, is Carolina really going to lose this game? And just to come that close for Long Island and have it ripped away like that is just gut-wrenching. I mean, great effort from the Sharks, but dang. And that wasn't even the craziest game. I mean, Nichols down 9-1 to UC Irvine, and suddenly out of nowhere they come back and go up 12-11 in the ninth, and then they lose it on a walk-off.
Yeah.
13-12.
Who were they playing?
It was Nichols against UC Irvine.
Oh, UC Irvine, yeah, sure.
Irvine.
Okay, so
right.
So this is why I love college baseball, I think, so much. I mean, I don't follow it as much as I would like. You can only follow so many sports, unless you're Dan, then you follow all the sports. But for the most
Well,
part, most of
not
us,
having a teaching job helps.
yeah, also true. And I guess that and I was at these West Virginia games last weekend or 2 weekends ago or something like that, 2 weekends ago with Dad, and any like you can come back from any lead in college baseball. I know every once in a while in the MLB, like someone will come back from 9-1 or 10-1 or whatever. Like that happens, but it's so rare because those guys are professionals. They get a big lead like that, they close it out. It's difficult to do, and there's 162 games. I'm not sure that every time in the regular season a team goes down 10-1 in a meaningless game, even though every game is meaningful in some sense of the word, that they're like, hey, let's mount a serious comeback and win this game 12-10. I could be wrong. Maybe that's every baseball player thinks they always have a shot. There's no clock, so you never know. But in college baseball, like I was at those games, those West Virginia games, and West Virginia was, up a couple runs, and John was doing his thing where he's getting confident and beating his chest. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's college baseball now. You just never know. Like a 5-run, 6-run lead is not comfortable in college baseball. You see those leads break open all the time. One thing leads to another. You can't find a reliever who can close the door. They start getting hot. Someone hits a 3-run homer all of a sudden, and then you're behind. So the College Baseball World Series is always fun because of these great comebacks, these upsets that happen around this time, the regionals and the super regionals. Then you get to Omaha and everything gets even a little crazier. So super excited for the start of college baseball. We're going to talk a lot about college baseball here at the top of the hour. Do some West Virginia recap. Absolutely. That's our team here on Godzilla Wins because that's where Joe pitches. But then we'll also talk about some other things. Tennessee's 50-win season. Are they for real? And some of the more dangerous number ones or some of the more dangerous lower seeds that could make some noise here in the tournament. We'll do that at the top of the hour. But before we get into the UFC, which we're going to bring in Trent Connor here at 8:30 to do so, I want to talk a little bit about Bill Walton and his legacy to the game of basketball. Now, Bill died sadly this weekend, and we've, of course, been treated to a lot of great memories and stories about Bill Walton. He was such a colorful character, both with the Celtics and then as an announcer, famously a deadhead, toured with the Grateful Dead a lot, kind of a free spirit, Dan, someone you don't see in sports all the time. And, these guys like Bill Walton or Charles Barkley, these guys in sports media who take their entire personality and just kind of like, they don't screen anything. Like everything about them is also on camera. They become such sort of legendary voices for us because we know so much about who they are as a person. And I think we can take a couple minutes to just reflect back on what Bill Walton has meant for the game of basketball and sports in general.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Walton was authentically, unapologetically Bill Walton 100% of the time. There was nothing fake or manufactured about him. Like he was who he was. He loved on the Pac-10, later Pac-12, and I've seen quite a bit on social media saying he just didn't want to live in a world where the Pac-12 didn't exist, because his passing came like a day after the final Pac-12 event. So, I mean, incredibly knowledgeable about the game, very interesting to listen to, and also was an incredible basketball player during his playing days. I mean, he just had so many talents and just it was an incredible life well lived.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is because he has been such a colorful character as an announcer, it's hard to remember how incredible he was as a basketball player on those Celtics teams with
Blazers
Red
too.
Auerbach and the Blazers as well, and how dominant he was in the championships that I believe he won with the Celtics, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, won a title in Portland. I think that's Portland's only title, actually.
I think you're right. I don't think they won one with Clyde Drexler.
They didn't.
I think that's why Drexler went to Houston at the end of his career to team up with Olajuwon and Barkley, was because he hadn't won a title. So Portland's only title and all those great seasons with the Celtics. And then just that his career as a sideline announcer, one of my friends texted me the other day. My friend was like an avid Lakers fan. He grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, just like I did. And for some reason, he just liked the Lakers. I mean, it wasn't hard at that time to like the Lakers. This would have been like Kobe and Shaq years, right? Like if you're looking for a sports team and you don't want to be a Hawks fan and you like the NBA, might as well choose the Lakers. But those Lakers games, they came on at like midnight or 11 p.m. Eastern time. And my friend would stay up and watch them all and then get to school the next day and be worthless because he'd be up till like 3 a.m. watching Lakers games. But he texted me because he was like, man, this Bill Walton thing has hit me kind of hard because I just grew up listening to him call those Lakers games on the sideline. And I felt like, I knew him. And just all the love he's gotten on social media, the stories about him texting. I think it was Mike Breen. Like, though it could have been, I think it might be someone. It was someone else that he used to work with a little bit, who he would text when he knew that he was calling whatever game Walton was watching. So, like, let's say he was watching, like, let's say the announcer was calling the Pacers-Knicks game. He'd be texting him in the middle of it, being like, "Hey, are you watching this Pacers-Knicks game? Incredible basketball. You should turn it on if you're not watching it. Announcer kind of sucks, but otherwise really good." And he would just do that over and over again to that specific announcer. And then, of course, there's the moment where he inhales the cupcake with the lit candle. That is kind of a viral moment for him on the court. So he's been just really an incredible member of the sports media, and we're sad to see him go. Dan, talk a little bit about that Pac-12 angle, just for people who aren't following. You mentioned the Pac-12's last game, and I guess the conference now is officially or will be soon disbanded. Although I've seen some maybe rumors about some teams trying to find a way to revive it, but I think that's just rumors. So what does this mean, for the Pac-12 and those teams that have now that haven't found a home for their respective schools?
Yeah, so so the Pac-12 is now the Pac-2 with Oregon State and Washington State. And basically their situation is they have 2 years to try and either find a way to keep the Pac-12 alive with kind of a reverse merger with the Mountain West, basically convince the Mountain West schools that they do better with the Pac-12 brand, which Oregon State and Washington State now own, or they can just join another conference. Which what they're doing is football. They're officially classified as part of the Pac-2, and they're playing a Mountain West schedule just to fill out their games. In other sports, basketball, they're joining the West Coast Conference, so they'll be playing the likes of Gonzaga, Loyola Marymount, St. Mary's. So there's at least some good games there. Baseball is kind of interesting. I forget what conference Oregon State is joining, because Oregon State is a national power in baseball. I mean, Washington State's kind of forgettable in that sense, but it's basically just a lot of moving pieces, and the two remaining schools are trying to figure out whatever they can do to try and resurrect the league and avoid the fate that the schools from the old Southwest Conference suffered when they were suddenly no longer part of a major conference back in 1996. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be very tough for those schools because they're just out there on an island and nobody really wants them because they're nowhere close to a major market. I mean, Corvallis is not a major city. Pullman is so isolated. I mean, Pullman's not close to anything. So they don't have huge fan bases. So there's really just not much of anything to get any of the TV networks excited about either school. So, I mean, other than Oregon State baseball. Oregon State baseball, of course, would get plenty of people excited, but you need more than that to get a TV deal. So I don't know what's going to happen with those teams. I would guess they'll join the Mountain West eventually.
Yeah, I think what I've seen before is basically not that they would join the Mountain West and possibly just merge under the Pac-12 banner. So use the Pac-12 brand, but with all the Mountain West schools, which I mean, okay, fine. Like, anyone who follows sports knows that this is not really the Pac-12 as we know it. And I just it's the same thing that you're talking about with these major markets. Like, I mean, the Mountain West, you have San Diego State, Fresno State, Nevada, UNLV, Utah State, Air Force, Colorado, Wyoming, Boise State. Then you would have Washington State, Oregon State, and then the one I'm forgetting is the whatever Northern California Mountain West team that is. I'm
San
looking at the
Jose State.
logo. That's right, San Jose State. So
And
you
then
know,
Hawaii is part of the league for football.
that's right. And so, I mean, where's your market? You know, like San Jose has a huge market, but it's San Jose State. Otherwise, I mean, you're talking about other than those California schools and maybe Nevada and UNLV, which are big cities.
Boise.
Talking about, Boise as well. And Boise has a great brand for football. The thing that really sucks is that I know, like Washington State, you know, Mike Leach kind of resurrected that football program, and they've been relatively relevant since he left and then sadly passed. But Oregon State does have like good athletics. They have a good women's basketball team. They have a great baseball team. They have a great football program. I can't believe that another conference did. I mean, I know it might just be market, availability, that it's such a small market, but I mean, like Oxford is a small market for Ole Miss, and yet they're in the SEC. Sometimes it has more to do with the fan base than anything else. I'm just sort of shocked that Oregon State wasn't able to find a home that's a little bit more has a little bit more going on than I guess the Mountain West.
Well, I mean, it's tough because there's the geographic isolation and there's the fact that there has to be a home for you, because the ACC took Cal and Stanford to get to 18. I mean, there doesn't really seem to be an appetite to go to 20. The Big Ten doesn't seem to want to go to 20. And the SEC, for all of their flaws, has at least decided that, we are the Southeastern Conference. So Texas and Oklahoma is about as far west and north as we're willing to go. So the SEC is at least holding to geography. So, I mean, unless you're going to get the Big 12 interested, and the Big 12 doesn't really seem to want to push past 16 at this point either, like, what's left?
Yeah. And I mean, the Big 12, like, just going coast to coast, like, I mean, I understand.
I looked up Oregon State, and Oregon State baseball has actually chosen to play an independent schedule for next year.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, good for them, because they are a huge baseball program.
Washington State decided, we're not a baseball school. We'll go play in the Mountain West. Fine. Oregon State decided, no, we're actually really good at this. We don't need to join a conference for this. We'll just go play whoever.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, I'm not really shedding tears for Washington State. I mean, I like when they're good at football, but Oregon State, I have a more of a fondness for, just because they have been relevant for much longer.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens to Oregon State in football, because one of the biggest signs, Jonathan Smith read the writing on the wall and hopped to Michigan State. And you're talking about a guy who had made Corvallis into a fortress and used to play quarterback for the Beavers.
Yeah.
I mean, if that kind of loyalty isn't enough to keep him around in this situation, and he's off to the Big Ten where he's never had any ties to that part of the country, it doesn't say much for Oregon State's future.
No, it really doesn't. And that's too bad, because from a betting perspective, Oregon State was awesome. Because you could make a lot of money whenever someone was playing in Corvallis, especially if it was a bigger team. I mean, Dan, I remember you on the show multiple times said, "Hey, well, this line's not right." Like Oregon State should always be a heavy favorite at home. They're so good at home. Yeah. And so RIP to one of our Washington. Yeah, it's hard to get to. Those schools that are hard to get to are tough. Like, they talk about that at West Virginia all the time, trying to get to Morgantown for baseball games. It's just like impossible. And by the time the team gets there, they're like exhausted. So we're going to talk a little UFC 302 here with Trent Connor in a minute. Should be pretty exciting. Very pumped for this UFC 302 card. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about our sponsor, Newfound Thread, and their 5 pocket pants. Y'all, these are the best pants I've ever worn. I can't like my emotional reaction to a pair of pants is outsized. I can't tell you how much I love these pants. I mean, yes, are they just pants? Well, they're pants, but they're more than pants. They're the greatest pants I've ever worn in my entire life, and I wish I was exaggerating. Like I wish this was hyperbolic. It's not. I love these pants so much. The idea with them is that the pockets in the pants can double as like a glass cleaner. So they have like a really soft sort of threading in the pockets, which if anyone is watching on a live stream, you can probably tell I wear glasses. May have to get Trent a pair. Trent wears glasses as well. But just in general, these are like, I mean, these pants are so comfortable and they fit right. They're terrific. And the thing I love about Newfound Thread is that you can get a discount here, 10% discount with the promo code Godzilla. All you got to do is go to newfoundthread.com, newfoundthread.com, promo code Godzilla. Get you 10% off your pants. And they are, they're a little pricey, but look, good clothes are expensive. That's just how it works. You want to buy cheap clothes that fall apart, then be my guest. But if you want a nice pair of pants, or look, you want to do something nice for Father's Day, I'm telling you, dads love these pants. They're comfy. They look good. They're versatile. Dads aren't always dressing up for every occasion, but you can wear these out to Applebee's, or you can wear them out to a nice Italian restaurant, so long as you don't spill your lasagna on the pants. No one wants that. But so great Father's Day gift with that promo code Godzilla. Great pants for any man. Go to newfoundthread.com. Newfoundthread.com. 5 pocket pants, put in the promo code Godzilla. You will not be disappointed. I can promise you that. These pants are incredible. Buy them, buy them, buy them. All right, Trent, we're here talking a little UFC 302. Trent Connor, staff writer for GodzillaWins.com. If you haven't checked out Trent's work, please do so. He puts out an MLB power rankings every week, which as an Astros fan, I am always interested to see where Trent puts the Astros. He's been very kind to them, lately. They win a couple games. He moves them up. He says, "Oh, maybe they're getting hot." Then they start losing again. He's like, never mind. Back to 20. So, but I appreciate his at least confidence in the Astros' future as a team that seems to be just struggling to find any momentum unless they're playing the A's. So, we'll see about that.
Yeah, they got a little bump this week.
Yeah, they did.
Up.
Yeah, they did. But now they're losing again, I think.
Yeah,
they've been losing like every day again. Whenever they play a good team, they just suck. I mean, they might not be that good this year.
Yeah, they still got a chance in the division though.
That's true. That division sucks. The Mariners suck as well. So Trent, we're talking a little UFC 302, and we haven't done the UFC talk in a while. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on to talk UFC here is that I think this is a huge pay-per-view. I know the Conor McGregor pay-per-view is coming up in a couple weeks as well. We'll definitely talk about that one. Gotta love Conor. But top of the ticket here is Islam Makhachev against Dustin Poirier. And I guess the reason I'm so excited about this is not necessarily that Dustin Poirier is that good. I guess like he's not Makhachev, but he's like a fan favorite. Everybody loves him. He's great. He's like must-see TV. He's an exciting fighter. And then, of course, Makhachev is one of the best fighters in the entire company. So, Trent, just tell us a little bit about why this UFC is so exciting, so important in your eyes.
Well, Dustin Poirier is the main story here. He's had such a legendary career in the UFC. He's been fighting since 2010 for the UFC, and he's just had, countless legendary fights. You can just go up his resume. There's so many I can't even talk about. And then last fight, he was fighting an up-and-comer in Benoit Saint Denis and just put his lights out in the second round, and everyone was counting him out. He was a 190 underdog. No one gave him a chance, and now he's finally got a third chance to win the belt against Islam, who was Khabib's training partner, who he lost to the first time that he fought for the title. And there's just something different about this fight than his other two title fights.
What is so like? Is it the St. Denis win? Because I mean, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he lost the BMF title fight, which was like in a really big match for him, and he's like 2-2 in his last 4. Is it just that the St. Denis fight was such a surprise that it looks like maybe he's figured out a way to take some of that ability that he hasn't actually translated lately in his career to W's, because he's mostly a striker. He doesn't really like to grapple that much. And those guys, I mean, Islam is also more of a striker, but those guys tend to, struggle against guys, anyone who can really grapple. And St. Denis definitely had the ability to take him out. Really impressive up and comer.
Yeah, it was a little bit of just him. The way he won the last fight definitely plays into it, but I think this matchup is just different than his last 2 title fight matchups, because Islam has shown that he doesn't have the greatest chin in the world, and Poirier, I mean, he's got accurate power shots, better than anyone else in the division. I mean, he's definitely got a chance to put Islam's lights out in this one, but he's got to be smart. And he wasn't smart in his last 2 title fights, and that's what ended up he got choked out in both of them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, right? You get him on the map because and we'll talk a little bit. Let's save this for the end, because I'm going to get carried away, and then all of a sudden we're going to spend like 15 minutes breaking it down. And then when we go back to it, we're not going to have anything to say. So we'll hold that off until the end. It's just exciting to talk about those 2 guys at the top of the fight. But before we do that, we'll get a little bit back to our roots. We haven't been doing a lot of, I guess, picking some more going against the spread, some lines like that. But with the UFC, it's always fun. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the undercard fights that you like here. Maybe either some parlays or just some ways that you think people could make a little bit of money. Because I love the UFC, like I love it. But dude, like if you're in Philadelphia, like the fight starts at midnight. So yeah. Sometimes the UFC is tough because you get super pumped up and you're just like, oh my God, like the big fights are so far away. But the undercard fights are a lot of time where you can make the money. So Trent, tell us about a couple guys who you think maybe could be offer some value in the undercards.
Okay. We got Jailton Almeida, who was moved out off of the main card earlier this week, and he's now fighting on the prelims, which I think will be on ESPN or ESPN2, so be very widely available. He's a minus 300 favorite against Alexander Romanov, and I think this is a rebound fight. He lost his last fight to Curtis Blades, and this is a great rebound fight for him to get back on track, get the hype train kind of rolling again. And I like him by submission in that fight at plus 140 if you're looking for. He's definitely a parlay piece, but if you're looking for something like a prop to bet, plus 140 by submission is the way to go.
So your first one is Jailton Almeida plus 140 by submission.
Yep. Romanov's a decent wrestler, but he's not that great of a defensive wrestler. And Almeida is a top tier wrestler in this division. He should get him down on the mat.
So that gets us a little bit of plus money. What are a couple others you like?
Okay, the featured prelim, Cesar Almeida, is a former kickboxer, one of the most elite middleweight kickboxers in the world, top 3. He's transitioned to MMA like Alex Pereira, and he's a pick'em in a fight against Roman Kopylov, who is also a striker, never been knocked out, so this should be a fun fight too. And Almeida's, I think he's going to be too technical for Kopylov. Kopylov could potentially try to wrestle him, but I don't see that happen. He doesn't have great top control. Once he gets Almeida to the mat, he might get him there, but I don't think he can hold him down for too long. And I think Almeida's going to outstrike him on the feet.
Okay, that's interesting. So Kopylov has never been knocked out, is what you're saying?
Right. He's only lost by submission and decision.
Okay, and I've seen Kopylov fight. He likes to stand up and bang, like for sure, right? I mean, he likes to stay on his feet.
He's a fun fighter.
Yeah, and those guys are always fun. Always fun to watch. And then, you think, okay, well, your confidence, if you've never been knocked out and you'd like to, like if you have a strong chin and you'd rather stand up there and strike, I mean, it's always fun to watch because their confidence is unreal. So they get in there quickly. Whereas a lot of those guys like Kopilov will attack pretty quickly. A lot of those guys who like to strike, they'll spend the first 2 rounds kind of just ducking and diving. And then they'll, go for they'll turn up the heat kind of in the 3rd round. But you're saying Cesar Almeida is too technical and can get him on the mat and also can outstrike him is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, Almeida was a world-class kickboxer. I just think he's going to be too much for Kopilov. He's just going to be way too technical. He's accurate. He lands at like 64% accuracy. I mean, it's a different beast when a guy's been just kickboxing for his entire life. Now he gets to an MMA fight where he can mainly just kickbox.
Okay. So Almeida you just got him.
I would say money line -108 is what it is on DraftKings right now.
All
Play
right.
it safe.
Shout out
Could take
to
him by
DraftKings.
KO. +240, but
All right. Let's do so we got the -108 money line here, Cesar Almeida on the undercard. Shout out to DraftKings. Great line there. Look, anytime I can get any fight that's not -500 on UFC,
right.
I'll take that. Like sometimes these fights, you're like, oh, this looks interesting. What's the line? -1400. Okay, great. Well, I'll just wager $1,400 then. Thanks. So always nice to get a line that's a little bit more closer to pick 'em as you're saying. We got time for maybe one more undercard here.
The Mickey Gall Basil Hafez fight is one that I'm eyeing. Mickey Gall is returning to the UFC after he didn't get his contract renewed after his last fight, but he's back now, and I think he's got something to prove. He's fighting in his backyard. He's from this Newark area, and he's fighting a guy that had a really good short notice fight against Jack Della Maddalena last time, but I think he is susceptible to the submission here by Mickey Gall because Hafez is going to wrestle and Mickey Gall is dangerous off his back. And he's fighting in his hometown. He's got something to prove. Very motivated. I think Mickey Gall by sub +700 is a nice long shot prop to bet here.
What makes him so dangerous on the mat?
I mean, he's got world-class jiu-jitsu. He's, I think, got pretty much everyone except for one of his wins in the UFC has come from submission. I mean, he's long, he's kind of wiry, and he's tough. He's tough as nails. I mean, he's had a couple of fights where he's just taken a beating, but it doesn't stop him, and he always attacking submissions.
Okay. So, all right. So we got Jalton Almeida by submission +140, Cesar Almeida money line -108, and then Mickey Gall by submission. And remind me the DK
+700.
Oh, +700. Oh,
Yeah,
there we go. All
nice
right.
long shot. Yeah.
Look, you gotta have, I think, one, like if you're gonna play every game or every match from the prelims up to the main event, you got to have a couple in the prelims that are just straight long shots. Like I remember, and man, I mean, like that stuff is fun. I remember being in Arizona a couple, like maybe, I don't know, this was a couple months ago, like in February. Big fight. Can't remember who it was, but it was a huge fight at the top of the card. And I was at the DraftKings like brick and mortar sports book. They have a couple of those. They have some FanDuel and DraftKings ones in Arizona. I'm sure they have them in other states where it's legal. I live in Mississippi where there is no DraftKings. But in Arizona, I mean, you could just be in the book and for UFC, it's nice to be there, like somewhere where you can fire off a wager right before the match starts, because it can be, either you got to load them up all at once or you got to be real quick about your because the lines move so much. So that was a lot of fun. I remember winning a couple of those long shots and feeling like Mr. Moneybags. And then I got my butt kicked in the main event and went home I had probably broke even, maybe lost like a little bit of money, but I was way up, and then got killed at the end of it, which happens a lot in UFCs. But those main events are so difficult to handicap. But before we talk about the co-main event, which I'm excited about as well, we want to talk a little bit about Beard Vet Coffee. Been drinking Beard Vet Coffee now what feels like my entire life. I can't go back. Can't drink any other coffee. Gotta be Beard Vet. Beard Vet Coffee is some of the best coffee you can taste. You can get it all online. Go to beardvet.com. Beardvet.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla. Get you 10% off all of your coffee needs. That includes the fine ground coffee, includes the K-cups and the whole beans. I like to get the whole beans. Got a little coffee maker that you dump the whole beans in. You grind it right up there, spits out your fresh coffee. And this coffee is so incredible, so reasonably priced. And the 10% discount basically knocks off the shipping. So you're good with that as well. Beard Vet Coffee is just so incredible, such great coffee. And they get it to you so quickly. I talk about that all the time, but I can't get over it. Logistics is such an important part of running a company and in what we call late capitalism now. You got to be able to ship it to me quickly. Otherwise, I don't want it. So one of the things I love about Beard Vet Coffee is you just, fire it off, get it to me there quickly. That way I never run out of coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. I don't know if you can tell by the speed in which I throw out my ideas. I definitely am well caffeinated, and that's all thanks to Beard Vet Coffee. So go to beardvet.com, beardvet.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla, get you 10% off all your coffee needs. You won't be disappointed. Got to try it out. Some great coffee there. Okay, we're welcoming in Nate Perry here. Just 45 minutes late to the show, so excited to have him now. Just
good morning.
Morning. Must have just ran into a little bit of traffic there on the way to the computer. No problem. We're here talking UFC. Nate, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a UFC match going on tonight. Big UFC match here. And, Nate, you've been a big guy for us in the UFC. So if you have some thoughts on the co-main event, we'll get to you here in a minute. But we'll start with Trent, because Trent is locked in. Listen, Sean Strickland, who is kind of, I don't know, he can be annoying to handicap. Yeah. And Paulo Costa. Trent, set this up for us. This is our co-main event. It's not a title bout, but it's a big fight. Just give us a 1 or 2 minute sort of snapshot of both of these guys, and then we'll go to Nate about some of his thoughts on who can win this match.
Well, firstly, this is a 5-round fight, so I think that plays into Strickland's hand a little bit because he is kind of a point fighter. He has a boxing technique, fights beyond his jab, racks up a lot of strikes. And then you got Costa on the other side, who's kind of this big, muscle-bound fighter with he's kind of got shorter arms, so he tends to get hit a little bit. And I think Strickland's reach advantage, he's got a 4-inch reach advantage, should help him. But Paulo Costa isn't necessarily known for his power punches either. He's powerful, but he doesn't land one shot knockout punches. He'll hit you with a shot, and then he'll blitz in and land like three to four more big power shots. But he's always throwing with heat. He never just throws anything light out there. And he definitely works in some kicks too. And neither of them are going to wrestle. I would bet money on that.
So, okay. And we'll get to your pick here in a minute, Trent, but if neither of them are going to wrestle, then you got to think maybe a TKO here could be, or a KO could be the best play for sure. Nate, you've been following Sean Strickland for his career. Huge fan of his attitude, both on and out of the mat. What do you think about this Strickland Costa match? How excited are you for these two guys who really do like to stand up there and just bang away at each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Trent kind of nailed it in terms of if it was a 3-round fight and they could just really get after it, and we weren't worried about sort of cardio concerns or just sort of distance concerns. I think that I kind of would like Costa in this spot. But 5 rounds is a different fight. And Strickland's just so strong with just being able to go the distance. He's done it. I think he's had five championship length fights, where he's gone 5 rounds. He can do the distance. So from that perspective, I think that this is probably a good fight for Strickland, just based on, on that. So I hate the price. I mean, from a gambling perspective, Strickland's what, minus 265, something like that right now, Trent.
Yep, he's a wide favorite.
But maybe he gets dinged a little bit. Maybe you bet him live. Maybe the first round is maybe not totally clear, and you can find a way to bet Strickland for a little bit of a discount live. But yeah, I mean, and also just like you're betting on Sean Strickland, who's just like he's just such a jerk.
Yeah, why? Like,
there's just nothing fun about like rooting for him. Like,
what is it? Anyways. What is it about him specifically? Like, for our listeners who don't follow a lot of UFC, why does Sean Strickland suck?
Some of it's a disagreement with his politics, that are pretty out there. And he's pretty outspoken about them. Some may call him a misogynist. Others may call him a racist.
Great. So, all right. So
there's a lot of problems.
Checking a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's checking a lot of boxes. Trent, am I?
Yeah, he's not afraid to speak his mind.
Yeah.
What I'll say.
Not always. Whenever those UFC guys are like, hey, let me weigh in on some issues of the day. You're not always like. Sometimes you're like, hey man, like look, I appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate your entertainment value there in the octagon, but I'm not sure we always need you as like a public intellectual, like But look, athletes got a microphone, and you put a microphone in front of anybody, and they're liable to say some pretty out of pocket stuff. I've certainly seen that happen before. So Trent, it looks like Nate, from a betting perspective, okay, maybe Strickland. Live bet him in the first or second round if he feels like he's struggling. Where do you see some value here?
I'm torn on who wins this fight. I would say Strickland gets the decision nod, but you don't know what you're going to get with him. I mean, when he fought Adesanya, he fought like he had nothing to lose, and then in his last title defense, he looked like he was kind of hesitant. I like this fight to go the distance plus 110. Will be the angle I attack this.
I've seen a lot of that trend. I've seen a lot of people like this to go to distance, and I think that's because Strickland can go 5 rounds, and you never really. It looks like this might go to decision. So I also like this fight to go the distance. I think that's the best bang for your buck there. You get up to some of these co-main events, it can be really hard to find where to put your money that's not going to be minus 500 for something. So plus 110, and we'll talk about that with the next fight, but plus 110 to go to the distance, I like that as well. Nice pick there. And Nate's going to get a little weird and see if maybe Strickland looks shaky and then bet him down maybe in the second or third round. Live betting, nothing wrong with that. Got to do a little live betting when you're especially a 5-round fight UFC. I mean, if you don't have the app fired up and you're not watching the line move, what are you doing? I mean, this is 2024. You fire up that app and do live bet.
What else are you doing at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time?
Exactly, right?
I'll probably be driving home from Tallahassee.
Yeah. Dan will not be live betting UFC 302, but to me, look, I don't live in a state where this is possible, and sometimes I'm glad of that because I love to live bet, probably too much. It's like you hit one live bet in like a baseball game and you feel like a Greek god. I mean, you're just like, I'm the man. Like, I knew he was going to hit a single plus 200, baby. So, can you get a little carried away. All right, let's talk about the main event here. Islam. We talked about this a little bit. We'll give our picks here in a minute. Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier. Trent, I know you set us up a little bit earlier, so we'll start with Nate here. And then we'll go back to you and your pick. Nate, huge fight, for both fighters. Poirier has at times looked shaky 2-2 in his last fights, but looked great against St. Denis, an up-and-comer, in his last fight, which earned him this title fight against Makhachev. Of course, he lost to Nurmagomedov Khabib, who was Makhachev's fighting partner in a very famous fight. But Poirier has had a storied career. And then, of course, Makhachev, I think, has won his last 11 fights, maybe something like that. He's just, incredible. Has the title. So this is a title fight What do you see here? Do you like Poirier's chances? I mean, Makhachev is like minus 600, so not a lot of value there if you just like the favorite.
I mean, yeah, I think that's Poirier's a crowd favorite. He's like everything that like we were just talking about, like Sean Strickland's a jerk, and UFC's like kind of done a good job of this, where they've sort of created these heel type of characters, and they've sort of created guys that are just like kind of guys that everyone roots for. And it seems like Poirier is like just sort of a guy that everyone roots for. Everyone's like, Dustin Poirier is kind of just a cool guy. But Makhachev's just a machine. I mean, he's only lost once in his career. This will be, I think he's won 13 straight fights. This is his third title defense. I mean, he's just looked totally unstoppable, much like Khabib did. Khabib obviously famously has never lost in the UFC. His sort of training partner and fighting partner. So from that perspective, yeah, the line seems right. He should be a big favorite. Poirier looks like he's probably getting a little bit slower, maybe sort of losing a step. He's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. A couple losses. Makhachev just has been just dismantling everyone, including Volkanovski. As October, who everyone thought was kind of maybe the pound for pound best. My sort of inclination is there's not a lot of value on this. Which is kind of disappointing. It seems like a lot of people are betting Poirier just looking at the numbers, which I find interesting. And I think that is just because they're like, oh, like nice guy, gonna bet for the good guy. But I suspect Makhachev probably wins this. I think that he's around even money to win by submission. I don't think that's the worst bet in the world. If you do want to take it, but yeah, that's sort of where I'm at just looking at this fight.
Yeah, Trent, I mean, you can weigh in here too. We talked a little bit about Poirier on the mat and where you might be able to find a little bit of value, because just betting him on the money line is probably not the smartest. And one thing I know about betting UFC is that every time I take a minus 600, I lose. Like, there's value in a main event, in a title fight, of always just taking the dog at plus 500 or 600, just because it's basically comes down to 50-50. You see it happen all the time. Everybody's like, this is a lock, and then something weird happens because it's fighting. But Trent, talk a little bit about your pick here, and Poirier struggling, how he struggles with on the mat on his back, and how he can be really he can make some dumb decisions while he's trying to go for that rear naked chokehold, I think.
Yeah, he gets himself into some sticky situations, and he cannot do that in this fight. Islam will take advantage, and it's, you're right. The minus 600 tag on Makhachev is too high, I think. If I were to bet a side in this, I would take Poirier, but it's an uncomfortable bet, to say the least. I mean, but he's got the whole storybook ending going for him. Longtime UFC fans have watched this guy literally grow up inside the octagon. He's done beat some of the biggest names in the promotion. It's hard to not root for him in a way, but Islam is very, very skilled in what he does, and he will get there on the mat and probably choke Poirier out.
And it's also a medical concern with Makhachev too, isn't there? I've seen something about
staph
infection that he had in his leg.
Yeah. There's some, who knows how much truth there is to that, and if it is true, the antibiotics definitely play a role in how he feels the day of the fight. So, I mean, we'll find out tonight, I guess.
Yeah, and I think Poirier's had staph infection in a fight as well, which is kind of
right.
I mean, that happens. Right,
yeah.
That happens.
Yeah,
a lot.
it happens.
These guys are in kind of like staph infection, like central training all the time. Like, there's no like better place to get staph than
staph infection hotels. 2 sweaty guys just rolling around on each other.
Right. Yeah. Well, look, we're about to get to that top of the hour. We got to take a break here, but I'm going to go with Poirier. I've been burned too much on these minus 600s. Give me the money line, baby. I'm not saying put your mortgage on it, but throw a unit or two on it. You might be surprised, man. These stupid main event fights, just They always seem to do something that's unexpected. That's why we love the UFC. So give me the plus money. Give me the dog. I'll take Poirier. You guys can have Makhachev, although he'd probably win by submission in round 2.
I think if you take Poirier, I'd take him to win by KO because that's his main path to victory here.
Yeah,
plus
that's
700. Yeah,
there we go.
Yes.
That's the second plus 700.
I'm betting
Trent's
Poirier.
giving
That's
out.
where I'm betting him.
Well,
I like the
I'm
over
there.
1.5 in this too. Just
I'm there.
throw something else out there.
Over 1.5 as well. Okay, well, look, we want to thank Trent Connor coming on, talk a little UFC 302.
Thanks,
Really enjoyed talking about that. You can check out Trent's writing on GodzillaWins.com. You can find him on Twitter at UFC Capper. That's at UFC Capper. I guess it's X now. We're going to take a 30-second break here. You listen to the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show. We're going to come back, do a little college baseball, talk a little West Virginia, a little Tennessee, maybe a little UNC, just pretty much whatever is on Dan's mind. And then at 9:30, Jay Delson, baby, doing some golf. Nothing better than the Canadian Open, one of my favorite tournaments. So it should be a fun hour. Don't turn the dial. Be right back.
Listening to Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network. For a deeper dive without the jive, visit the website of winners, GodzillaWins.com. Let's get back to the show with the guys in the know, John, Jack, and Nate. It's Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
You are listening to the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show. If you're on the live stream, this is an interesting little view here. Kind of, kind of like it. There we go. Like that one a little bit better. I don't know why. I know our producer, shout out to Michael Coleman, who produces the show every week and does such an amazing job with us. I think that when someone logs off, that's like the streaming platform restream, like their sort of default is like the horizontal, but it freaks me out every time I see it. I guess it's just because all of a sudden you're closer to the camera. It just, I don't know. It makes me super uncomfortable. So don't love the 3-window default pane there. But I would roll with it if we got stuck on there. No problem. I'm a professional, sort of. So here we are. Okay. We're going to do Dan and Nate, little college baseball here. Now, here's the thing about Godzilla Wins in college baseball. We have to spend a lot of time talking about West Virginia. Even though John is not on the show today because he's flying to Tucson as we speak, he's in the air. He's ready to after West Virginia's win last night, he booked a flight. He's going out there to watch the Mountaineers play. But because we got a family member who plays for West Virginia, that's where we always start the college baseball discussion. And Dan, we'll start here with this really weird region. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, but it bears mentioning. 4 teams in this region are Arizona, Dallas Baptist. They're the 1 and 2 seeds. West Virginia is the 3 seed. Grand Canyon is the 4 seed.
Yeah.
So West Virginia upsets Dallas Baptist. Dallas Baptist is a tough team. Really tough. I read your write-up on the game yesterday, Nate, and Dan, I'm sorry, and you were like, listen, this is going to be a close game, but Dallas Baptist just has a little bit more talent that probably eke out a victory here, close margin. What you overlooked in this is like Dan, you'd have to be so locked into West Virginia baseball to know this. But Derek Clark has been just a stud on the mound. He shoved yesterday, went like 7 innings, gave up a run maybe. He's incredible. I saw him pitch against TCU, I think it was Friday night. And he just shoved. He's a lefty. He's scrappy. He's intense. The dude is just a gamer. He's competitive. If you had ever seen him in person, you would be like, oh yeah, like this guy can win any game. He's just one of those kind of pitchers.
Jack, I'm going to push back a little bit. I didn't overlook Derek Clark's ability. I talked about Derek Clark's ability in that piece. I just thought West Virginia would have a little too many problems hitting Ryan Johnson. I did not anticipate that 3-run homer. That's what I overlooked. But Derek
Yeah.
Clark pitching, throwing in a great performance and actually going the distance. I didn't overlook that.
Yeah. Well, I had to play the role of John where I just make stuff up. So
Okay.
dude, I'm so glad he's not here because the fact that you were like, I respect West Virginia. I think Dallas Baptist will win. I thought he was going to be on the show.
He'd be all
when
over
we
me for
won,
that.
I know when we won, I was like, oh my God, it's going to be 15 minutes of him just being like, Dan doesn't know what he's talking about. West Virginia, baby.
Okay, I actually have a
trying to,
text
like, edit
message.
the article
I
on
actually
the
have a
website.
text message from John on Monday when the regionals came out, when I told him what Dallas Baptist brought to the table. His reaction was, quote, "Yikes."
Yeah, but he's a slave to his to whatever is just happened. He's a reactionary kind of guy. So yikes on Monday.
Comments for the article and being like, "Told you."
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he might.
Wrong.
Very possible. Very possible.
Well,
but no, Derek Clark pitched a phenomenal game, and like, I'm gonna slightly dip into a soccer analogy here. There's a saying in soccer that's usually used for the World Cup: you can't win the tournament in your first game, but you can certainly lose it. In college baseball, you actually might be able to win it in your first game if you get a pitching performance like what Derek Clark gave West Virginia, because going 9 innings and saving the bullpen entirely, that's huge. Because, I mean, Jack, as you know from watching the Big 12 tournament and some of these other events, the way that you manage your pitchers in an event like this usually decides who's going to win it. And it's so much easier to come through the top half of the bracket and not go through the elimination games. And when you don't have to burn your best relievers or make them pitch longer than necessary, it sets you up for so many possibilities. Like, I touched on this in my preview of today's game between West Virginia and Grand Canyon. Thanks to what Derek Clark did, now the Mountaineers have a ton of options for this game. Like, if they have to ask Joe or Carson Estridge to pitch more than a couple innings, that's okay, because now they've set themselves up to do that.
Yeah, you're right about that. They can use, like, and that's the thing with any not just West Virginia, any college baseball team. Like, your pen is not going to be
Florida State yesterday. Like, sitting in the stands. Because when I'm tracking games, I'm actually in the stands as opposed to in the press box. But when Carson Dorsey came out for Florida State, because he's not their ace, Jamie Arnold is Florida State's ace, and he's the one going today. Florida State gambled that Carson Dorsey would be able to give them a decent showing, which was a huge gamble because Duke lit Carson Dorsey up in the ACC final. He only went 1 inning and gave up 8 runs that game. Yesterday, the FSU fans were saying, if he can give us 4 innings, we'll be thrilled. He gave him 8.2 innings, 1-run baseball. And they finally pulled him when Stetson got a base runner with 2 down in the bottom of the 9th, and the fans were booing the decision because they wanted him to get the complete game. He got a well-deserved standing ovation, and he's really set FSU up in a big way to win this regional with what he gave the Seminoles yesterday.
Dan, quick question, and this is just out of curiosity for our listeners, I think, too. So when you're tracking the games, is there a reason you don't sit in the press box? Is it that's just that you want to be a little bit closer to the action?
No, it's because I don't have a media credential.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, when I'm tracking these games, this is the danger of live betting at times. Like, there's somebody in the stands who's inputting the results to the sports books, and when I'm tracking, that somebody is me.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's really interesting. Well, I'll have to ask you a little bit more about that at some other time. That I didn't know you did that.
Yeah.
Can you go into how that works? Like, who are you? I mean, I don't know how much you can talk about it, but
yeah, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but basically, this company has me go to whatever game is local, and I sit in the stands and send them the information as to what's happening in the game, so that they have it before it shows up on television, so that they can adjust the algorithms properly.
Yeah, so they're maybe a couple seconds ahead of whatever's happening on TV.
Like
this
yes,
year.
yesterday, because like there are a couple TVs you can see in Florida State's ballpark, and I think the TVs were about 20 seconds behind the action on the field. So if you're actually watching the game on ESPN Plus, like what you're seeing is well behind what's already happened, and the books already know what's happened.
Sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I mean, I never really knew how they did that. As a guy who's, I mean, I've live bet games when you're actually at the game, and sometimes you're slower than the books, and you're like, what? Like, there's no delay. How am I?
Yeah,
And they're just, that's how they make all their money. So obviously they're really good at it. So interesting, Dan. I didn't know you did that. Okay, well, let's circle back to West Virginia a little bit, just because I want to talk about that region in general, and then we'll talk a little bit about college baseball world more specifically. So, like I said, West Virginia upsets Dallas Baptist, although West Virginia, they're a 3 seed because they got bounced from the Big 12 tournament, but they're really a 2 seed. They're a tough team, so that was always going to be a tough matchup. Now the big one though is Grand Canyon upsets Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan, as you were saying earlier, Arizona might get bounced in the elimination game today because they have to face now Dallas Baptist, who has already beaten them this year. What happened to Arizona? I mean, this was a team that was heavily favored to run through this region,
which they shouldn't have been. I mean, Arizona, like I told John when the matchups came out, I think your big going competition here is Dallas Baptist. Like Arizona is overseeded. I honestly don't know why the Wildcats are hosting. Like you say how West Virginia is really a 2, so is Arizona. Like they should not be a national seed. Their RPI was 31. They ended up getting the national seed in large part because they were the regular season and Pac-12 and tournament champions of the Pac-12. But the only reason they're the tournament champions of the Pac-12 is because the Pac-12 has a weird pool play format, which the ACC uses as well. And I'm not a fan of it because what it ends up doing is it places way too much weight on the regular season. The ACC's format basically states if the 3 teams in the pool all go 1-1, then the higher seed just automatically advances. So, I mean, it's like, what's the point? And the Pac-12 is even worse because they invite 9 teams to the conference tournament, the 3 group winners, and then the best second place team. So Arizona lost its game to California in pool play and still got invited to the semifinals and then won 2 games and won the Pac-12 tournament. So you're talking about a team that won a Pac-12 that, to be honest, wasn't very good this year. And Oregon State was the best team in the Pac-12, but because Oregon State just didn't get enough done in conference play, Arizona finished ahead of them. So the committee, I think, decided, we have to give Oregon State a seed because they've earned it. But how is that going to look if Arizona was both regular season and tournament champions and they don't get a seed while Oregon State does? So they inflated Arizona's seed, and West Virginia and Dallas Baptist are in perfect position to take advantage of it. And Arizona actually lost to Grand Canyon in the regular season as well. So this has been a regional that I've been looking at as prime potential for an upset. I thought Dallas Baptist and West Virginia were the 2 best teams in the regional, and that might very well play out.
That's really interesting. So if you're just kind of handicapping today, of course, pitching matchups and everything else aside, just to clean up on this region, and then we'll move on to some other bigger topics, I guess. You might handicap it as like a West Virginia Dallas Baptist championship game, or whatever, game 4, game 5. Correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, interesting. Grand Canyon, maybe they play upset again today. Hopefully West Virginia wins, but West Virginia could end up in Dallas Baptist as well. Yeah. I knew he. Go ahead.
And I think that's huge. That's huge for West Virginia that they're getting to face a not completely lesser opponent, because I mean Grand Canyon's still talented enough to get here. I mean, but on the other side of the coin, Grand Canyon also did kind of back their way into the tournament because the only reason they're here is Tarleton State isn't eligible.
Yeah.
So because Tarleton State actually won the WAC tournament, but Grand Canyon got the bid because Charlton State is still in a provisional transitional period. So I just don't think Grand Canyon has enough depth to beat the Mountaineers. So I'm here. So I think West Virginia will get to that regional final, and I'm going to guess that they're going to end up playing Dallas Baptist again for that super regional spot.
Yeah, really interesting. That would be a really interesting super regional game there. Grand Canyon, their biggest advantage is that they are only about an hour and a half away, whereas it took West Virginia quite a while to get to Tucson, and even Dallas Baptist here,
took John even longer.
It did, yeah. He'll be there pretty soon, and those guys are used to playing the heat. It's hot down there in Tucson. I don't know what the temperature is. I'm sure it's in the upper hundreds, or at least 100. That's kind of how it goes. Of course, it's a dry heat, as everybody says. It's still hot, so you're not used to playing in that kind of weather all the time. It can be tough, or even just like just living in the weather, like just being an athlete. That's like, oh, okay, I have to like walk around and. This heat. Grand Canyon a little bit more used to the Arizona heat than these other two teams, but that'd be their biggest advantage, is that they just didn't really have to travel. Well, let's wrap up on that region, and we'll talk some bigger topics here in a minute with Dan. Got to get his thoughts on some of this college baseball stuff. Before we do that, I got to remind everybody, especially those in the Virginia area, that if you're not going to Rosie's Gaming Emporium, then I don't know what you're doing. Now, the thing I texted Dad, I was like, all right, well, what do you want me to talk about with Rosie's Day? Because we could talk about so much. I mean, the big wins and the slot machines, and just how fun the casinos are when you step into them in Virginia. But he wants me to talk a little bit about the racing at Colonial Downs, which starts July 18th and ends through September 8th. So a big racing season at Colonial Downs coming up here in just about a month and a half. Dad's pumped. You get racing every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and you can reserve your custom seats now by going to colonialdowns.com. This is the best racetrack in the USA, guys. And John and I, we've been to a lot of racetracks in our lives. Definitely love to the Ponies. Beautiful racetrack. Love it. Of course, there's 4 major grade A races, and Dad has a suite there. Always does every year. Except for that one time when like the governor was there or something, and they kicked him out, and he had to like stand in the parking lot and just like, I don't know. I think he was just like picketing the whole thing because he was upset that the governor ousted him from his suite for a weekend. But I know that he's usually has a suite unless someone more important wants it. He's excited for Colonial Downs. We all are racing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Reserve those seats now, guys, in the Virginia area. Like the horses, they cannot do any better than Colonial Downs. What a great track. Go to colonialdowns.com to reserve those seats, and we'll see you there. Okay, Dan, I want to talk a little bit about the other news in college baseball. I guess my big question here is this 50-win Tennessee team. They won 9-3 last night in their first game. Like, is this their year? They have the most wins. They're one of the best teams in the in the country right now, and they're an SEC team. So a lot of times those SEC teams end up in Omaha hoisting the trophy, at least as of late. Is this Tennessee's year, Dan? What do you see from the Volunteers that you like or dislike?
I mean, yeah, it might very well be Tennessee's year, and it's pretty amazing how things are really seeming to set up for the Volunteers, because you look at what at Tennessee's path, it's fairly reasonable. And you look at who they would play in the super regional, and that regional seems to be collapsing because Wake Forest and East Carolina both lost. That's who Tennessee would match up with in the super regionals, is the winner of that region. So if they're going to end up facing Evansville or VCU, I mean, that is a much easier path to Omaha. And what Tennessee does well is pretty much everything. I mean, they led the SEC in home runs. Christian Moore, 28 bombs on the season. Blake Burke hits 372. And the Vols have excellent pitching in Chris Stamos and Drew Beam. So there's really just not a weakness on this Tennessee team. They drive in runs. They have 5 different hitters who had at least 48 RBIs. And it's just really tough to see a team that's been so battle-tested by the SEC and has come out just a juggernaut from all of that. It's really tough to see them going down before Omaha. I'll be very surprised unless they end up facing Wake Forest, who is talented enough to give them a very tight battle in the supers. I'll be very surprised if Tennessee doesn't make it to Omaha.
Yeah, I think everybody will. What do you like about Wake Forest, and how could they maybe play spoiler to Tennessee in the supers?
I mean, the biggest thing for Wake Forest is their pitching. I mean, Chase Burns is simply phenomenal. And one of the things that Wake Forest's coach mentioned about Chase Burns is that he's the best pitcher that he's seen. And keep in mind that this is a man who last year had a front row seat to the pitching duel between Paul Skeens and Rhett Lauder, which is one of the best pitching duels that college baseball has seen in years, perhaps decades. So if he's saying that Chase Burns is even better than that, that's really high praise. Burns leads the nation in strikeouts, some 10-1 record, 184 Ks on the year. So now they have to use him because they didn't use him against VCU, which they lost the game. It didn't really matter because they never scored. But they've got to use him today, and they'll have him for Tennessee if they get to the super regionals. Beyond him, Wake has a lot of offense usually. I mean, it didn't work out last time, but Nick Kurtz probably isn't going to go too long without hitting. So Wake, even though they lost that first game, they still have a decent chance to come back through, especially because they only have to beat East Carolina once. If they get through this game with East Carolina, they've still got to go through the 4-game slog, but 3 of those are going to come against VCU and Evansville. So it's doable.
Okay, so it's doable there. Now let's just turn to some other teams and get a little betting perspective in here because we are, Godzilla wins. We like to win here. What are some of the best bets you see just for the regionals, just, today or tomorrow, either some futures like, hey, I think this team could get out of the, could get to Omaha or get to the super regionals or whatever, or just some places you see some value. Just give our listeners a couple places where you might see some value that they could play today or tomorrow.
I mean, LSU is a number 2 seed. You really can't count this team out.
They looked great yesterday.
Yeah, North Carolina looked shaky.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a spot where, I mean, LSU is still going to get bet up a little higher than you would expect because they are the defending national champions. But as the number 2 seed, that's probably a spot to look for value. In the Athens regional, North Carolina Wilmington is really overlooked. Their ERA has improved quite a bit. The Seahawks beat both NC State and Wake Forest during the regular season, and Georgia really isn't that battle tested at this level yet. They went only 1-5 against the SEC giants, Tennessee and Kentucky. 13 of their SEC wins came against Missouri, Mississippi, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Alabama. Missouri didn't make the field at all. Mississippi didn't make the field. Missouri didn't even make the SEC tournament. South Carolina has looked all right, so that's not too bad. Vanderbilt got bombed by Coastal Carolina, and Alabama's in the loser's bracket as well after losing to Central Florida. So Georgia's SEC record, it's tough to win 17 games in the SEC and not have that prove anything, but Georgia's record is a little soft. So UNCW could be a dark horse. And on the other side of that, Florida doesn't have the strong record, but the Gators have so many hitters, and they're playing in a hitter's park in Stillwater against Oklahoma State. Florida could be a very dangerous 3 seed.
Interesting. So you like Florida there, you like UNC Wilmington, LSU, of course, and
Yeah.
there a lot of money will go towards LSU, just a national brand for baseball, especially with all the Paul Skeens stuff. But still, I mean, they're always dangerous, and they're a number 2 seed, and they can always make some noise. They looked great yesterday. What about, and I'm throwing this out there, you may not know anything about this, but being in Mississippi, I mean, Ole Miss is not in the tournament, but Mississippi State is. They're in the Charlottesville regional. They beat St. John's yesterday. So wondering what that looks like for Mississippi State as they play Virginia, which is the number 1 seed hosting that. They'll be not in the elimination game, but they'll be in that game to advance to Sunday to the championship. Anything? Can Mississippi State make some noise here against Virginia? I mean, Virginia's pretty tough.
Virginia is pretty tough. It's contrasting styles here. It's Virginia's hitting against Mississippi State's pitching. So Mississippi State has done a pretty fine job of keeping runs off the board in a very tough SEC. Virginia is pretty much all offense all the time. 8 of the Cavaliers' 9 batters hit 300 or better. They steal well. They hit for power, but they do not have any pitching at all other than Evan Blanco. So I don't know if he went yesterday. I would guess he did not. I would guess that the Cavaliers probably saved him for Mississippi State. So that's going to be tough for the Bulldogs, but I think Mississippi State is the deeper team. And it wouldn't shock me at all if the Bulldogs are able to get through this. It's just tough to see which part of this equation is going to win, because if Virginia's hitting the ball well, then good luck to the Bulldogs. But if the Bulldogs can keep the ball in the park, they've got the edge.
Okay, so I mean, I feel that way too. I think Mississippi State can make some noise.
Yeah.
Today, I'm trying to figure out who Virginia pitched yesterday, but it's been trouble
Let's
finding the box score. I got it. Joe Savino.
Okay.
He pitched
So
yesterday,
I would bet quite heavily that Evan Blanco will go today, and that'll be the biggest test, because if Mississippi State is able to win this game and force Virginia into the elimination bracket, I do not see the Cavaliers winning 2 against the Bulldogs. So I'm in a must-win situation. I think Mississippi State could do it if they have to win 2 against Virginia, but I don't think Virginia's winning 2 straight against Mississippi State.
Well, look, I got no love for Mississippi State when it comes to football, but baseball is a little bit different. You know, you're in Mississippi, you just cheer for whatever team's in the regional. So
I mean,
go Bulldogs,
two of the last 3 College World Series have gone to the Mississippis.
That's right. You know, there's a lot of good baseball played down here. Those teams can get hot. Ole Miss had a rough year, but Mississippi State's always tough in baseball. So
yeah.
Now, Nate, before we get to golf, and I know I know Dan's got to go here pretty soon, cover those Tallahassee games. So Dan, if you want to log off now, you're welcome to. Always love having you on the show. You can find Dan's writing on GodzillaWins.com. He's doing a ton of college baseball right now, and some soccer as well. I believe you were doing some soccer.
Yep, finishing up that soccer piece right now, and also got hockey, because we still got the conference finals going on. We just didn't have time to talk about them today.
Yeah, and I thought I had Dad, and he really wanted to do a bunch of college baseball. So had I known that he was going to fly into Tucson, I probably would have done a little bit of hockey as well, because we're still in the midst of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But we'll get back to that next week. We can always take a week off here of the Stanley Cup. Nate, before we get to Jay, though, I want to talk a little bit to you about the move here, a little life update. You know, people have been following you now for a year and a half, and you mentioned a while ago that you decided to move down to Texas, up there in Corpus Christi. So tell us a little bit about Gulf Coast living now that you're down there. Got a different background here, some older appliances, I might add, but it looks like a hotel room.
This is a hotel room. Yeah. So the move is in progress still. We are waiting on the moving truck with all of our belongings, most of our furniture and other things. So we're just kind of holed up in a hotel room for the next couple of days. But, you know, everything everyone told us was true. Every single person I told, they said, moving to Texas, and they said, hot down there. And it is damn hot down here. Not that I didn't know that already, but, you know, thanks everyone for the update. And I can confirm it is warm. But, you know, other than that, it's pretty much what you'd expect. It is South Texas. You've been down here, you know what it's like.
Yeah, welcome to the Southeast. You know, it's June, so not only is it going to be hot, it's going to be awful to go outside in. I mean, at least in the West when it's hot. Now, I'm not saying like walking around Vegas when it's like 115 in late June, like that's not comfortable either. I'm not saying that is.
That's just dangerous.
Yeah, for real.
It's just like Vegas in summer is just like try not to be out there too long lest you die.
I mean, that's why the strip is all connected, just to keep people from dying and to keep people spending money, of course.
Yeah. Look, I love going from air-conditioned casino floor to air-conditioned casino floor.
Me too.
Don't leave this casino on pain of death. You might literally die in the parking lot walking to your car.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know it's rough out there, but the southeast heat, man, with the humidity down there in Texas, where I'm in Mississippi, and Florida, where Dan is. I
Louisiana.
mean, Louisiana. It's hot. There's bugs everywhere. You play the game like
Yes.
that's just like, where did this bug bite come from? Why do I itch everywhere? Why are there so many bugs in the house? Why are they in my bed? Like, it's just constant battle with the bugs. I was like driving the other day, and a spider had spun its web and was just like dangling in front of the car as I'm driving, just back and forth, being like, "Oh, I love it in here." And then the ticks out here in Mississippi, the ticks are awful. It's so wooded that I'm just constantly like finding ticks and having to flush them down the toilet or drown them in alcohol, which is not a great use of vodka to like just to take the tick out that way.
I don't know if you need to have like
the Tito's.
Real ticks.
Well, the one that I pulled like off of me, that was kind of that had bitten me. I was so pissed. I was like, "You're going in the Tito's. I'm not even giving you the rubbing alcohol. Like, you're gonna get the real stuff."
You just keep like a half full bottle and you just dunk them in there occasionally and just leave it. Just seal up the bottle and just.
Yeah, you could. That's disgusting.
Little execution chamber for them.
Yeah. Just that's not great. But look, it's so awful. So and then the allergies are awful. So just really, what I'm trying to do is get everybody to move to the southeast in June. That's what, if you're in a climate that's not awful.
I was complaining to my girlfriend. I was like, I've never moved anywhere in the winter or when the weather is temperate. I've only ever moved when it's hot or helped friends move.
Don't do it in the winter.
Don't do it.
I mean, if you're doing it in the South, you're fine. But we initially moved to Indianapolis in dead of January, and we arrived in a snowstorm.
Also tough.
Yeah, I don't do the I don't do cold climates. I'd just be, it would have to be
I miss
something.
the cold.
Yeah,
the last
I know you
major
do.
move I took part in was moving you to New Orleans, Jack, in July.
Oh,
and it was,
yeah.
It was warm. I remember rolling my jeans off after we got done unloading the truck because I couldn't actually pull them off. They were so wet from sweat.
And it was like 10 p.m. I mean,
yeah,
it was
awful, nighttime. It was nighttime in New Orleans.
Yeah. New Orleans in August in July is brutal. I mean, it's brutal. Like, and you're walking around in pants thinking this is awful, but a lot of fun in March. Great weather in March in New Orleans. Shout out to NOLA. Okay, so we should be joined by Jay Delsing here pretty soon to talk a little golf. Before we do that, I want to give one more shout out to our friends at Newfound Thread, the makers of the greatest pants I've ever worn in my entire life. You're listening to the Godzilla Win Saturday Pick Show, and what you're listening to right now is one of my favorite live reads. Of course, I love all our sponsors, but newfoundthread.com. What an incredible product these guys are. Go to newfoundthread.com and grab those 5-pocket pants. They're amazing. They got a soft lining in the middle, so in the pocket, so you can wipe off the glasses. These are the best pants I've ever worn. John wears them all the time too. Father's Day's coming up. I'm telling you, get these pants for your dad. I don't care if your dad is a corporate bigwig or if he's like my dad and he just walks around in whatever all day long. They all love the Newfound Thread pants. So Father's Day's coming up, and you can use the promo code Godzilla, get a little discount there on those pants. That you will not be disappointed. These are some of the most incredible pants. So newfoundthread.com, newfoundthread.com, 5-pocket pants. Godzilla promo code is Godzilla, get you that 10% off. Okay, we're gonna bring in Jay Delsing here, talk a little golf. Happy to have Jay back with us. Jay, welcome back to the show. Big weekend golf. I got a lot of things I want to talk about, but first, let's just do a little check-in. How you doing?
Great, boys. Great. How are you doing? Doing great. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, man. We've there's always drama in the world of golf now. Just throw live in the mix, and we got a lot of stuff we can talk about. But
so I wanted to start. I wanted to start with the Scheffler stuff, but I'm going to table that for a minute because what I really want to talk about, I think, is Lexi Thompson retiring from the LPGA, and of course the very sad news of Grayson Murray who died on, I think, was this last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago?
Week ago,
Yeah, a week
Yeah,
ago.
a week ago. And just kind of the state of mental health in golf. And Jay, I thought you would be a good person to talk to. I mean, the Lexi thing is very surprising. I didn't see her statement. I don't know if she mentioned mental health. I would imagine that that's got to be part of it. She is like one of the best women's golfers in the world. It's not like she misses cuts and is struggling and wants to do something else with her life. Like this is, I mean, there's, Nelly Korda's, I guess, the best women's golfer in the world, but Lexi Thompson's like pretty close to that echelon here. And I guess, Jay, my question is, what's your reaction to this Lexi Thompson news? And if you can speak to just kind of, the mental toll that this sport can take on you when you're just in the grind every season like they are.
Yeah, guys. So Lexi has been pretty secretive about her mental health issues. When we were actually doing the U.S. Open in 2015 at Lancaster Country Club there in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where the girls are this week, and I walked 36 holes with her. I played golf with her brother. She's when you watch her play any sport, I saw some old videos. You could tell she's a chick that hung around brothers. She had older brothers because she's just in the mix, and she's rough and tumble but guys, the life on the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour can be really, really lonely. And what happened with Grayson Murray is just a real tragedy. His mental health issues were really well documented. He leaned on alcohol a lot to just try to numb some of the pain, and it was really a big loss for the PGA Tour. This kid was one of the brightest young players coming out. He'd won twice. Jerry Haas, who's the head golf coach at Wake Forest, who's had people like Webb Simpson through there, his nephew Bill Haas, Kyle Reifert, a lot of really, really good players, said Grayson Murray was by far and away the most talented kid that's ever come through our school. He also, guys, couldn't stick. He went through 3 different universities. So he just had this troubled mental health issue. And Lexi has talked about that before as well. She has actually stepped away from the game in the past because of her mental health. And guys, it just can get really lonely. Imagine having your game kind of suck. You go out to the golf course where you're not getting the results you want, but you're putting a lot of time and effort into it. And then you go back to a hotel room where it's not home. It's your home for the week. But, some of these men and women bring their dogs with them and just to do anything to try to normalize it. And just depending upon your makeup, not everybody's cut out for that. They're just really not. All the fans see is, holy smokes, Lexi played 1 week, made $350,000, and she's got all these sponsors on her thing. But she's been a pro, guys, since she was 15. So she turned pro, and before Lisa Lee came out, she was the youngest girl to ever make a cut on the LPGA Tour. So she broke a lot of those barriers that are being thrown down now. So it just gets really tough, guys. It's my buddy that was an All-American with me at UCLA that didn't make it. When we're sitting around and people like, you get to play professional golf for a living, and he'll jump in and go, yeah, he's got the job everybody wants until they get it. And then once you get it, they're kind of like, oh man, it's way harder than you think. And so, you need to be able to be comfortable alone. And sometimes, guys, being alone with your own thoughts is the scariest place to be, because you can get your mind running. And I'll never forget I'm a dumbass, as you guys know, but I'm sitting there watching a movie, and all of a sudden I get this voice in my head that says, you're never going to make another cut again. And guys, I had to leave the movie. I was like, I had my whole thing set up. I had my M&Ms, I had my popcorn. And all of a sudden I couldn't stop this voice going, dude, you're never going to make another cut again. I'm like, who are you? And why are, so you get these kind of these mental attacks, and you really need to learn how to control it. And I'm making light of something I probably shouldn't make light of, but it's a true story. It really does happen. And you can imagine those thoughts can get way more dramatic than that.
Well, and Nate, Jay mentioned Lexi she's been a professional for 14 years. So we say, oh, she's 29. but
this is
she's
her
been doing
18th
this since she was
U.S. Open appearance.
yeah. I
Every
mean,
U.S. Open since she was 12 years old.
that's
You
insane.
made a
I
cut
mean,
at 12
Yeah,
years old in the
12,
U.S.
yeah.
Open. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, she's already
Um,
had basically a full career. I mean, she's only 29, but God, she's been doing this for over half her life.
Yeah, and those guys, like those young golfers, and not every golfer's a pro at 12, but it's a lot like tennis, where maybe you follow a lot of these guys when they're 23, 24, but they've been doing this nonstop their entire life. I mean, those sort of sports like tennis and golf, you climb the ranks individually, and you spend your whole life trying to be just a little bit better than the next person until you reach kind of the ultimate, which is the tour or a major championship or whatever. And I think like Naomi Osaka has talked about mental health as well in those types of issues. I think Lexi, having had this full career, I mean, it's a shock to everyone, but I mean, she's got enough money, and she might return. A lot of times they do.
She might return.
So we'll see.
Jack,
But
one thing I want to throw out there too, and you guys can relate to it way more than I can, but social media is a bear, right? Everybody's got an opinion about you now. And when we played, there wasn't social media. It wasn't part of our brand. But all of these young players, men and women, part of the team is someone managing their social media stuff. And everybody's got a voice. And guys, when my dad was playing baseball, and for the most part when I was playing golf, the worst thing anybody ever called you was a bum. That's
yeah.
like, I can take that.
And that still hurts.
You're a bum. No
Yeah.
big deal. But that's not how it is anymore. It is no holds bar, man.
In the way that you talking about like being in the movies and in your head thinking, I'll never make another cut again. Well, you can find people on social media who agree with you that you'll never make another cut again.
Yeah.
So
there's some guy, if you got enough comments, there's some guy saying you're never going to make another cut again.
You should have never started,
voice in your head.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the gambling stuff has made it, I think, more difficult for a lot of athletes, because now all of a sudden it's like personal whenever these guys don't
that cost me
perform.
money. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a lot of vitriol
I hate
with
you
that.
today, but I'm going to bet on you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You like this
Yeah.
grab
It's,
bag of stuff.
it's tough. Well, we're sad to see Lexi leave, but hopefully she'll return to the game in some form or fashion as either a media personality or back golfing at some point. But for right now, we have to say goodbye to Lexi on tour. I want to talk a little bit before we get to the Canadian Open, because there's not that much time. I love that tournament, but if you're not like deep in the golf world, hard to know exactly who some of these guys are. So I want to talk a little bit about the Scheffler stuff, because we still got Scotty Scheffler news. Whenever the number one golfer gets arrested, it's just going to be a while. So Nate, set us up here. Both sides have agreed to drop the charges. Gillis released a statement that was fine until the end with the pants thing, which was like bizarre. So just set us up, Nate, on what's going on with that, and we'll get our thoughts on kind of maybe the end of the Scheffler being arrested in Louisville saga.
Yeah, so I mean, we've covered it on the show. Scotty Scheffler, was arrested following a fairly chaotic morning at the PGA Championship, in which a spectator was struck and killed by a shuttle bus, very tragically. That delayed the tournament. It created quite a few traffic issues, and Scotty Scheffler evidently didn't hear, disregarded. It depends on who you're talking to, but at any rate, he had some sort of problem, miscommunication with an officer. The officer reached into his vehicle and apparently struck him, trying to get him to stop. Was drugged by the car when Scotty Scheffler pulled away, ruining his $80 pair of pants, the police officer's $80 pair of pants, and causing abrasions to his wrist and knee. And all of those charges ended up being dropped. Subsequent investigations showed that the officer improperly did not turn on his body cam during this confrontation. Doesn't appear to have properly identified himself before he just started swinging at Scotty Scheffler through an open window in his car. So there was quite a bit sort of going on that led to just the charges being dismissed, and Scotty Scheffler just moves on his way, which is kind of what we always thought was going to happen. I don't think we thought it would be this messy with the body cam being off and all these other sort of weird issues that seem to be sort of complicating. But I think that at the end of the day, I think we all kind of figured that these charges would probably be dropped. I mean, Scotty Scheffler wasn't going to prison for a felony, assault on
No,
like that was never,
and
that was not going to happen.
and Scheffler's lawyer dropped his lawsuit against the Louisville police department for basically, wrongful arrest. So,
Yeah.
the two sides just decided to part ways, and Gillis released a statement apologizing for his role in some of it. And then at the end, was still complaining about the $80 pants, which, I mean, it's like, I don't know. Okay. I mean, I get it. Like, he's trying to be tongue in cheek.
Talking point somewhere. I'm just not sure where it was a big talking point, because the $80 pants seem to be like a big thing.
I didn't understand how that even got injected into the, okay. So
I think it had to do with the damages incurred. Like, it was like, oh, I have an injury. Like, I have a boo-boo on my wrist and my knee. And also, like, these pants are worth $80.
You owe me $80.
Yeah, it was in the police report.
Charge list, I think. Yeah,
it was in the police report, and a bunch of journalists pointed it out. Like, what did he do? Like, because what it sounds like is that he lost control of his bowels. Like, that's what whenever someone says you ruined $80 pants, like after something with high adrenaline. So I mean, a lot of reporters pointed that out in the police report. It's like a ridiculous police report. But Jay, I mean, we all knew that this was going to happen. This was going to go away. I'm kind of glad it's going away, and I'm tired of talking about Scheffler. But just kind of final thoughts here on how bizarre this whole situation has been and how amicable the two parties have now left things.
I think it's a real testimony to Scotty Scheffler, guys, because he could have said, I didn't know he was struck. But could you imagine just sitting in your car? I mean, the thing that I keep going back to, guys, is where did the cop think he was going? I mean, he's right at the entrance of Valhalla. He's got his car all identified like, I'm going to go break into the golf course. I mean, it just doesn't make any damn sense.
He's telling the guy, like, I'm late for my tee time. I have to go.
Yeah, that's what he says. Yeah.
It's not like you can show up at 8, you got an 8 o'clock tee time. You can't show up at 8:01. It doesn't work. People are like, oh yeah, you can just get there. No, you have to be there right at that time. But at the end of the day, guys, I'd much rather talk about Xander Schauffele and how cool the tournament was, and Bryson DeChambeau, and that whole and the reemergence of Victor Hovland. But I said on my show, are we going to remember Scheffler being arrested? Or are we going to remember Xander getting his first major championship, man? And
Scheffler,
I know, because we're still talking about it.
Which sucks, because it was such a gutsy performance by Xander, and we're all happy that he got the win there. As golf fans, we've been waiting for that for a long time. I faded him pretty hardcore on Sunday and regretted that decision, of course. But I mean, all the trends had told me I needed to fade him, so I just did that anyway. So I'm not crying over fading a guy who has melted down. Did it the week before. But right. It's great to see. It's great to see Bryson. We were all over Bryson, and
I mean,
and of course, like that.
I mean, from Bryson, I mean, he's trailing by 2 going into the final day, and he shoots 64. I mean, I think that he probably thought that would be enough to win. In a
major championship,
64 in the final round, that should be enough to win if you're within 5 shots of the lead.
Absolutely. Yeah. Think about Xander with that close. I mean, closing 65 when you've never done it before, that's impressive.
Yeah.
It's extremely impressive, and it was a great major championship. I mean, they're not always like that. Sometimes everybody just kind of limps into, and it's like, okay, well, this guy's been in the lead and he's going to win, and or Scotty's in the lead, and you think, okay, forget it. But what an exciting major championship that was. And look, now we're on to the Canadian Open, which not an elevated event. So usually you got to really be a golf nut to know about some of these guys. But I like talking about, I just like the Canadian Open. I don't know why. I think it's because of last year. Open. Yeah, that's right. It's a national open. The fans are always great in Canada. Great golf fans up there. And then last year, the playoff between Fleetwood and not Hadwin, but who's the Canadian golfer who won? Hadwin's buddy. I can't remember his name now. I'm blanking on it. But that.
Oh, him too. That's terrible. Because Hadwin got tackled. Was it Nick Hardy?
Taylor?
Nick
Taylor. Nick Taylor. That's right. Yeah. Nick Taylor won last year.
The tackle on the 18th green of Adam Hadwin trying to celebrate with him in that cross body block by that Rennicott was
security card.
Spectacular.
Yeah, they didn't know who Hadwin was. Another mistaken identity by a golfer.
72nd hole.
Yeah.
So
He
good.
got speared. But okay, so we're on to Saturday here for the Canadian Open. Got about 10 minutes to talk about it. Now, Ryan Fox and Robert McIntyre in the lead. Two golfers who can close out a tournament, I think. But also really interested in y'all's thoughts on Joel Dahlman, who people know from Full Swing, is when he gets hot can be really tough to beat, and he should have a good day today. And then the other one I really like, kind of in the, I mean, there's Sam Burns, Bermuda Burns down there at T7, 4 shots off the lead, and Mackenzie Hughes, who can also be kind of streaky, but can be kind of tough. Jay, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Nate. Just some thoughts on the next 2 days of the Canadian Open. Some of these guys who maybe some people haven't heard of, but are kind of lurking around. You see Keith Mitchell, also Stuart Sink, I guess. So
Yeah, Stewie Sink just played in the senior
right.
championship yesterday. He's like ageless. Guys, let's start with the Canadians. I mean, Nick Hardy's T10th,
Yeah.
you know, in defending his crown. And if a Canadian golfer could follow up that victory, they hadn't had a Canadian golfer win the Canadian Open in I don't know how
That's
many
right.
years. And the other thing you got to remember, guys, Jack Nicklaus never won this event. So Jack would continually go up and play in the Canadian Open because he never won. And he finished second like a ridiculous number of times, but never did knock that off. So when I was playing in Tiger, that was one of the big things Tiger wanted to check the box up quickly and knock that tournament off. And I was playing in the year that he was at Glen Abbey. It was just spectacular.
When he hit that bunker shot, that fairway bunker shot.
I'm laying that ball up so quickly if I'm in that fairway bunker, and he's taking a 6-iron and going. I mean, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. But I also, so Sam Burns is a name that jumps out on me on this. This kid has been all but silent this year. He started off really good the first couple of weeks and just fell off. And I got to remind all of our bettors out there. Every single guy on the PGA Tour makes 80% of his money in 6 tournaments. It's stupid streaky. When you're making putts, you got to keep your foot on the gas and you just have to go for it. There was a formula, guys, that when we were playing, that a birdie on the last hole was worth 3 times what a bogey would cost you as you're coming down the stretch. But think of it this way, especially with today's crazy purses, if you finish solo third, you're going to make whatever. Let's just say $1 million. If you finish tie for 7th, it's going to go down so dramatically. You're going to wind up making like 280,000 or something. Huge amounts of money still, but that's why because our money is so top heavy, if you're in that top 10, man, it takes a lot of 15th and 20 place finishes to equal that. So that's how the money works out, and so that's what the player's mindset is. There's no sense of trying to protect. It's foot on the gas, and you've got it. It's not like, oh man, I hope I can stay 7th. If you have that mentality, you finish 15th. It's foot on the gas, keep making birdies, and try to go. And the Hamilton Golf Club is a par 70 golf course, and I think you're going to see a really good round out of Rory today. I really expect it with the way that he drives it. If you drive the ball well, that you can just take this golf course and knock it down to size. I also had my eye on another Canadian, Taylor Pendrith, who it's so it's so difficult, guys, to play in front of your home crowd, but man, those guys are going to have massive support after the cut's been made. So those are kind of who I'm liking. I really expect Sam Burns to be there by the end of this whole thing.
Couple guys I could see moving quickly today too, Nate, and then we'll get to you. Fleetwood, you know, he's T21 right now, 3 under. That's like exact. Fleetwood is always going to give you one round that's like a 63, and he played well at the Canadian Open last year, almost won it. Also, Højgaard has been playing well this season. Nikolai Højgaard from the European Tour.
Love that pick, Jack. That kid is a player. He played in the Ryder Cup team and was just a silent hero that just played well every day.
Yeah, Nate and I used to do a lot of DP World Tour stuff in some different podcasts and at Godzilla Wins, and we love Højgaard. We've been following him for such a long time. He was such a killer on the DP World Tour. You know, Keith Mitchell, T13, he can make a move. That'd probably be my guys. And then I don't know. I kind of like McIntyre at the top there too. I mean, I know he's 10 under, but Robert McIntyre is a really dangerous golfer as well. He can be very good. Nate, got a couple guys you like. We got a couple minutes here if you want to spotlight one or two dudes to pay attention to this week at the Canadian Open.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bobby Mack, Robert McIntyre, is, he's a guy that, had plenty of success on the DP World Tour, has had plenty of success sort of internationally, and he's still looking to check the box, on a PGA Tour event. Same with Ryan Fox. I mean, both those guys are like, they're bona fide closers. Like they can both win golf tournaments. They've won plenty. This leaderboard is kind of fun because it's like all these greatest hits from guys that were sort of formerly playing DP World Tour maybe a year or two ago. And now they've
Oh, it looks like Nate cut out there, man. He's in a hotel. The hotel Wi-Fi, man.
I love the kitchenette in the background.
So
That is, I know those well, man. Those
those.
I love what he was saying, and you know what's interesting about Ryan Fox, Jack, and I glossed over him, and I shouldn't have, because he pops up so much more than he ever gets any credit for. He's a guy that quietly makes a boatload of money without winning over here. And to Nate's point, I mean, those guys can get it done. They've got it done on the DP World Tour, and both he and Rob McIntyre, like Nate was saying, really, really good players.
Nate's back with us here. We know, look, Nate, we know the hotel Wi-Fi struggle. John's always in those hotel Wi-Fis. I was in it 2 weeks ago. It's just like, I think what happens is you're up and you're humming along, and then everybody else starts to get up and log onto the computer, and it's like the bandwidth just like plummets down to nothing, and the stream just doesn't work. So we're glad to have you back. You can finish up your thoughts here, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was just sort of loving, we talked about Højgaard already. We talked about Robert Mack and Ryan Fox. Thorborn Olesen, Thunder Bear. He's kind of hanging around in the top 15 there. It's a bunch of guys that, I remember watching, early in the morning, on the Golf Channel, a couple of years ago, and now they're sort of making their run on the PGA Tour, and that's sort of fun for me. And I like these tournaments that are a little bit shorter courses because it tends to sort of create a different leaderboard. And this course is obviously very short. I'm not even sure it's 7,000 yards. So it just sort of opens up the field. This isn't just, bombers only. It's a lot of guys that don't have the length. Joel Damon sitting there 2 back. I mean, his game has been in the toilet for over a year now. He's been just non-existent, and he's been so open about it and sort of so candid about it. And his caddy, God bless him, Gino Bonelli, is also just like, a treasure in his own right. And to see Joel Damon finally catch a hot putter and hopefully put together a cool tournament for one of the good guys on tour is really cool.
Joel had a T8 or something. Guys at the Players Championship was. You're so right, Nate. His game has been just dead, and he made like $1.5 million in 1 week.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
It's like, what a nice year you had this week.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah, I wish I had the ability to do that. So a couple more minutes left in the show. I'll give 2 shout outs here. First is to Dad, who is fighting with people on the Getter comment section. he's just been going back and forth. We air all this stuff on John's dad's network, and he's a politics guy, and that's his brand. And so, guys come into just random people on the internet come into these shows and want to talk politics, and he's always it's always fighting them with them in the comments, but he's not on the show, so now he's real active, and he's really going back and forth with some people there in the comments talking about politics. I won't read the comments out loud because we'll just leave it to your imagination. You know how Dad can be colorful with his language. So that's my first shout out. Second shout out, Charlie Hull. We talked about her before y'all came on earlier. Just all of a sudden smoking darts on tour.
How good is that?
I've been following Charlie Hull for a while, and I never remember seeing her smoke. So all of a sudden she was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to start smoking everywhere. And she's made she'd be kind of Twitter famous, just ripping those darts.
Guys, back in the old days, nobody smoked outside. They all smoked in the locker room. This is I'm dating the hell out of myself because you can't even smoke inside, period, now. But I'll never forget my rookie year. I turn around the corner and Lee Trevino goes, "Hey, man, you got a cigarette?" And I'm like, "No, I don't smoke? He goes, you don't smoke? What are you, a rookie? And I go, yeah. And he goes, yeah.
That's
I was like,
Jay. That's an incredible story.
I'm an asshole because I'm not smoking. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't even figure out how to play golf, but I should have been smoking. He'd have let me in the club. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Yeah, I was
Oh,
shocked
man.
though. Everybody, Tom
Yeah.
Watson, everybody was smoking in the locker rooms back in the day.
That is that's an incredible story, Jay, and we'll leave the show at that. So thank you for listening to the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show here. Thanks to Trent Connor, Dan Angel, Nate Perry, and Jay Delsing for joining us today. Super fun show. Join us next week for more sports. Should be really exciting. Got a lot to talk about next week as well. You're listening to the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show. Thanks for listening. Up next.